Hello, everybody, and welcome in once again to the Line Movers Network. College football, week number 9. We got an absolutely loaded schedule. Tonight, I am here with my two college experts, Ian Robbins and Trey Edge, once again. Trey's back after the thousands recommended he come back and give those picks that were red hot. So he's back. Ian's back. Ian had all his hot Heisman tips. I hope everyone got in last week because the numbers are coming down. Pickett looked good, Ian.
Pickett looked good. Oregon State had a nice win. Virginia's in there. So we'll see what happens. A lot of football left. We'll see how some of those features play out.
Absolutely. We have a loaded schedule this week, so we're going to get right into it. We're going to go down the featured games. We got 4 huge games, and then my guys will go rapid fire on a bunch of others. So we are going to start with the big one in the Big Ten. In East Lansing, undefeated versus undefeated. The Wolverines are heading into Spartyland. The Wolverines opened at about a 3.5-point favorite, up a tick to about 4. Total is about 51 this week. Wolverines going to play little brother in East Lansing. Trey, what?
Man, tough one in terms of matchup, not a tough one in terms of what to expect in style of game necessarily. You look at these two teams, excuse me, and by the way, thanks for having me back, guys. 2 of the best running teams in the country. And, you know, it's kind of synonymous with Big Ten football, but that's just the facts. They both average over 200 yards a game rushing. Some interesting stats when you break this down. And I was a little surprised at the line. You know, both these teams are top 10 teams. That's the first time that's happened since 1964, by the way.
Wow.
Who would have guessed that? But, you know, it's rushing versus rushing defenses. Quarterbacks aren't what I would call great. A lot of this is done on the ground. Kenneth Walker is a really good running back for Michigan State. You know, those guys at Michigan State, they average over 200 yards rushing. Michigan gives up 116. But I found some interesting stuff. You know, last 13 games, Michigan's 2-11 against the spread against Michigan State. Never would have guessed that. I mean, Harbaugh gets all the, you know, the bashing by not beating Ohio State. We're talking spreads here. Doesn't mean they didn't win the game. But the matchups are fascinating to me because you get a guy like Kenneth Walker against a good, strong run defense from Michigan. You flip that. Michigan State, you know, they allow 286 throwing, but Michigan's not a great passing team. So, you know, the styles match each other. The strengths match each other. It's at Michigan State. I think that plays a big role here. I think they've 4 out of 7 have gone over 52 points, but Michigan State's been great against the spread this year. And I just look at this game and I go, I can't find a field goal's worth of difference when you look at all the stats and all the metrics and all the different things. I can't find something that separates them more than a field goal. And you take the fact that Michigan State's at home and you're giving me Michigan State with that field goal. Love the 3.5 even more. And I got to roll with Sparty this weekend. Not necessarily for the win. Not necessarily for the win, for the cover.
Ian, Trey's on Sparty. What say you?
That's a great breakdown. And, you know, listening to that and having the same thoughts in my head, run strength, and 2 teams that are trying to dictate the pace up front and try to dominate up front, you know, try to win the trenches. And with that, I think the total of 51 is a little bit too high for a game like this. You got an early game. You know, it's not the feature game necessarily, even though maybe it should be with 2 top 10 teams. But, you know, 2 teams are going to establish. I think Kenny Walker is going to try to get, you know, Michigan State has no reason to give the ball to anybody but him the entire game. I think Michigan's going to try to grind it out, and it's going to be up to Cade McNamara or maybe even the freshman J.J. McCarthy to make a play at quarterback for Jim Harbaugh. Sorry, not John. John's in the NFL. To get really a signature win that he desperately needs this year. One of these teams is going to come out of this game as a statement as we can play with Ohio State or we can play with the national. We're in the playoff mix. And the other team is going to come out probably just totally forgotten about. Kenny Walker put his name back in the Heisman race. Harbaugh could put his name back in the mix of I'm not on the hot seat anymore. And I think it's going to be something that grinds out, try to take control on the trenches. Unders my play. I kind of lean picking straight up. If you got office pools or anything like that, I would kind of lean towards Michigan to come out with this game. But I do think the 3.5, 4.5 that's out there might be a little bit high for the spread, but I'm not going to touch the spread. I'll let Trey go with his side. I do like the under in this game a lot, actually.
Yeah, and one quick thing, if you don't mind, just backing Ian up on that. If you just look at defensive points given up by both of these teams, Michigan State gives up 18 points a game on defense. Michigan gives up 15 points a game. So, it's just backing Ian up here, and it seems rather obvious. And that's, I guess, as bettors, that's the one thing that scares us is when it seems obvious. But I'd roll with you too. I think that 52 is high.
Yeah. Looks like the clock should be ticking away all day.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the SEC. We have Ian, our Gator insider. We're going to go down to the largest outdoor cocktail party. CBS will be there, 3:30 Eastern in Jacksonville. The top-ranked Dogs of Georgia, the Florida Gators. Georgia opened about a 2-touchdown favorite at 14. I see it currently up a tick mostly everywhere, so just above the 2 touchdowns at 14.5. The total, again, just like the Michigan State game, Michigan also sitting around 51. Let's go to our Gator guy first, Ian.
Man, one of my favorite games that I used to go to, formerly known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Halloween weekend in Jacksonville. What a sight! Stadium half orange and blue, half that ugly shade of red and black that we're not going to talk about here. But a great atmosphere. It is truly split down the middle. Half the stadium, half the stadium. Both bands playing. Neutral site. Spot that players are pretty familiar with. It's not a long drive for Florida. Not too bad for Georgia. Great weekend atmosphere. An exciting game, especially when you have a number 1 team in the country and a team that's just been dominating, rolling. No question, number 1 team in the country coming in there. Not usually Georgia in that spot. This is a unique spot for Georgia being that big team that over 2 touchdown favorite over Florida. And, I think it's deserved. I think the way Florida has lost a couple of games now that shouldn't have a lot of turmoil in program questioning, fans questioning defensive coordinator Ty Grantham, questioning whether Dan Mullen is the right guy for the job. A little quarterback controversy with Florida. A lot of question marks coming into this game. It's easy to say, well, Georgia, they've just been so good. They've been the best team in the country. They have the best defense. They have the best running game. They can control the game. They can do whatever they want. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. What I can tell you is Florida's going to care. Florida's fans are going to care. You see a lot of times with teams who have high expectations and they fall off. What are they playing for? They're playing for the NFL. They're playing for themselves. Are they playing for the team? They're playing for the coach. We saw a couple teams with some high expectations turn up for one game. Texas A&M showed up for one game against Alabama and gave them a game. And A&M season was done. LSU season was done. They showed up for that one game against Florida. Players, they're trying to make their mark too. They're trying to get not their next contract, but they're trying to get their name noticed. And for these guys, there's no bigger notice fact than going up against Georgia. And I think Dan Mullen knows that. And he's a very good coach. And he's been in this situation before. And I do think the Gators will come up. The talent level is there. One thing that X's and O's, Florida has a running game that can control the offense. They have a creative play caller. They have somebody, they've gone toe-to-toe with talent-wise with Alabama. They've gone toe-to-toe with Georgia. They beat Georgia last year. They have the ability to stay with these guys talent-wise. They could create on offense. They have dual threat quarterbacks. They have talent on defense. Kaiir Elam is going to be a number 1 draft pick. Zach Carter might be a first-round draft pick on defense. They have picks. They have NFL talent on both sides. I think 2 touchdowns plus a hook is a lot of points for a rivalry game. We saw Florida stay with Alabama. You couldn't come out in the end. I do think we're going to see a lot more Anthony Richardson in this game at quarterback for Florida. He's an X factor. He's a dynamic athlete. He almost brought Florida back in that game against LSU. They showed some fight. in that second half. And, the week off, I do think Dan Mullen's going to be ready. I think this becomes now Florida's bowl game. This becomes their SEC championship game. This becomes the big game. You take out Georgia. And for Georgia, they really have nothing to lose. They're not going to be losing the SEC East if they lose this game. They're not going to be losing their playoff hopes if they lose this game. They obviously want to win this game, but they have nothing. Their perfect seasons on the line. It's not the biggest game for them. The biggest game for them is a couple weeks down the road. And for that, biasly, I will say I do think the talent level matches up. I think 14.5 is a little bit too much. I do think you will see more points than you might expect. So look over on this and sit back and watch and hope that I do think Dan Mullen's the right fit for Florida. Hope he gets it out and hope a lot of those questions kind of get pushed to the side into the offseason.
Trey.
That's a great breakdown. It's funny. Every week, Ian and I agree on so much, and we might disagree here, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But let me tell you why the concerns I have for Florida are these. It goes without saying that Georgia's the best defense in the country. You can look at stats, you can look at optics, just watch them play. But they're giving up 6 points a game. That stat in and of itself is ridiculous. But I look a little deeper into what they do, and they hold teams to 64 yards rushing a game. 64 yards. They held Kentucky to 51 yards. I'm not saying Kentucky is Florida. I'm just citing a very strong rush attack in the Kentucky Wildcats.
Well, this year,
I flipped that
better than Florida,
yeah,
so that's okay.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. Then I flip it over, and the thing that concerns me most is if you turn a team into a one-dimensional attack and you're a really good defense, that defense can dominate. And when I look, and Ian knows more about Florida than I do, I'm going mostly by stats and what little I've seen on TV. They have turned the ball over, the 7th most in the country.
Really?
Emory Jones, the quarterback, 9 interceptions on the year. Anthony Richards, 3 interceptions. Now, Richards is a more athletic guy. I think you agree with me. He's maybe more of a run threat, and that helps him this week. But 12 interceptions between the two of them. Again, 7th most turnovers in the country. And now you're playing the number 1 defense in the country. That concerns me. And when I look at it, I say, how many points does Florida have to score to be in this game with a chance to win? And you've got to score 3 touchdowns, right? You would think, and I don't think Florida can get there. So again, I'll cut it off here and just say I have a hard time finding the points for Florida. So I would go with Georgia. I had them winning it by 17. I think Ian's right. We may see a little bit more points here, 34-17, something like that. But I just can't find the points for Florida.
Yeah, it's fair. Georgia's a monster. Georgia's a beast. Georgia gets through the regular season undefeated. They're going to be favorites in every game.
Yeah,
deservedly so. The one thing I will say about both these coaches, they don't like each other, and
right.
They do know the spread.
Yeah,
yes, they do.
There's certain coaches who know the spread, and
that's right.
If it's a 17-point game late, and
Yep.
Dan Mullen has the ball, he knows the spread is 14. And if it's a 10-point game late and Kirby Smart has the ball, he knows the spread is 14. So just keep that in the back of your head if you got some live betting options. Backdoor will be open or closed depending on what side you're on.
Coach Stoops in Kentucky clearly knew that number when they were playing Georgia last week, when they took their time to go down the field, down 3 scores and scored with a second left. But great breakdown by both of you on opposite sides, but I agree with both sides. And to Trey's point, if Florida keeps turning this ball over, this could get ugly. Rolling along, our next game of our featured games, we're going to head back to the Big Ten. Night game on ESPN. Herb Street and Fowler will be calling it. Penn State is heading into the Horseshoe at night. 2 teams going in absolute different directions here. Penn State, the shine is off. This is gone from great to bad quickly. The quarterback looks banged up and can't throw the ball down the field. Ohio State, on the other end, has found their footing defensively. I believe they switched defensive callers a few weeks ago. The defense is rolling. The offense looks much different than it did against Oregon and early in the season. The offense is rolling. Ohio State is an 18-point favorite at home in the Horseshoe, up a tick from 17. We have a total of 45, down from about an opener of 46. Penn State at Ohio State. Trey, what do you got?
Man, what a roll the Buckeyes are on. Since the opening week loss to Oregon, opening week of the season, they have just been on fire. 49 points a game. That's number one in the country. You mentioned the defense. They're now giving up 18 points a game. Quarterback C.J. Stroud, 67% of his passes complete, 22 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. He's been incredible. Running back Travion Henderson's been great, averages almost 9 yards a carry. They're just an offensive juggernaut. If you want to find flaws with them, the defensive secondary is where they've given up some yards. But like you said, the defense has improved. They've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown since week 2. The hesitancy for Ohio State is who have they played? You know, this is the first ranked team they've played since that opening week loss against Oregon. Doesn't diminish what they've done, but you start to really see where they're going to, you get Penn State, even though Penn State's been bad the past couple of weeks, Michigan down the road. But everything points to Ohio State. Like I said, Ohio State's been hurt in the secondary. Passing teams have done some damage to Ohio State. So you flip it and look at Penn State and say, okay, what do they offer in ways of the passing game? Not a lot. Quarterback Sean Clifford has not looked good. Whether he's healthy or not, we don't know, but he doesn't look it. He's not thrown for 200 yards since September 5th against Villanova. I mean, in today's day and age, that's unheard of from a college quarterback. 2-game skid. They lose to Iowa. The 9 overtime loss to Illinois. All this, gave up 357 yards rushing last week. Everything points to Ohio State. And I agree. Ohio State wins. Now, 18 points is the problem because that is a huge spread in a game where, at least athletically, the team should be comparable. This is Penn State's national championship. This is their game of the year. They have to make a statement. I love Ohio State to win. I had 37-20 on my mind, so maybe a backdoor cover, something like that. But I'm actually going to roll with Penn State just to stay close enough to cover this spread.
Ian, Trey's on Penn State. What say you?
Yeah, great breakdown. You're talking about the juggernaut that is Ohio State, and they really haven't been tested. So they've been doing what they had to do. And you see C.J. Stroud coming to his own as a freshman there. A slew of NFL receivers that he has passing to. The guy who's been standing out is Travion Henderson, that running back who's working his way up the Heisman boards. 9 yards of carry is just unbelievable. And this is going to be their toughest test since Oregon. It could be the best defense they've gone up against. Penn State was clearly looking ahead. That was a classic sandwich spot last week where in the 9 overtime game at home the loss. But, that was coming off that loss to Iowa, looking ahead to Ohio State. Easy look ahead spot to get lost with Illinois there. Unfortunately, couldn't come out with a win to make this a little bit more of a marquee game, but good for Brett Bielema at Illinois. I know us in our home state of Illinois, those fans were happy. Well, back to Penn State. And is Sean Clifford healthy? That's the big question mark, because as soon as they were rolling, they were ready. In that first half against Iowa, Clifford's rolling, team is rolling, clearly the better team, on their way, looking ahead to maybe a possible national championship playoff appearance, and then Clifford gets hurt. They lose that game. Now they've lost to Illinois. So now what? Is Clifford healthy? I don't think he is. He certainly didn't look like it. They do have a little bit of talent, but their strength is in the defense. Is that defense going to be able to play with Ohio State? I don't think so. Are they going to be able to score with Ohio State? I don't think so. Maybe Dotson makes a play here. There is certainly a great receiver, but it's going to take a lot more. Penn State's been tested. They played some good teams. They played Iowa on the road. They played Auburn at home. They've had some nice performances. Franklin needs this one. If there's ever going to be a game they get up for, Franklin needs this game for sure. I just see it. I think Ohio State, we've seen it before. I think we're seeing the Mississippi again. They get tested early. They kind of run through. They got their tough games ahead of them. They know what they're doing. Coach Day, he's been there before. Perfect time to have your toughest games late when you have a freshman, a young offense, a young quarterback. So they have Penn State, Michigan State to close out the year. And I think they started out with a win. I think they win by 3+ touchdowns. And I think they might even go over on their own. And I do like that over as my best play in this game. I do think points will be scored in the horseshoe on Saturday night.
Clifford just doesn't look healthy.
No, he looks hurt.
Moving on, let's give the Mountain West some love because San Diego State's coming in at 7-0 and ranked in the top 20 in the country. Fresno State, who's had some very good games this year, has a good record, had Oregon on the ropes and just let them off in the last minute. Fresno State's heading into San Diego State. Like I mentioned, San Diego State's coming in undefeated. Brady Hoke has his team playing really, really well. You Michigan fans will remember that name. San Diego State opened as a small favorite and is still sitting as a small favorite, even though they're at home. They're about a 1-point favorite, a total of 45 currently. Let's start with Ian in this one.
Fresno State might be one of my favorite teams out west in the non-power conferences this year. I know they had a couple tough losses. They lost on the island in Hawaii. They did beat UCLA this year. They got some talent. They got some grit. They've really, really played well. Ronnie Rivers, senior running back, he's had a fantastic career capping off this year. He made some plays last week. So Fresno State played Nevada last week. That might have been one of the marquee games. The weekend had a lead entire game. Future first-round pick Carson Strong in Nevada drove him down, almost brought him all the way back. Fresno State made a play late. Were able to deny a 2-point conversion, hang on to win that game. The winner of this game is going to sit in the driver's seat for the conference title. This might be one of the weakest undefeated San Diego State teams we've seen in recent memory. San Diego State has a great pedigree of a program. They've had players play the next level. They've made noise. They've been ranked in the top 15 before, in the top 20 before, but they have not been impressive this year at all. I think they've been, hard to say overrated when they're undefeated and ranked, but I think the line says it all. They're a home 1-point favorite in a conference game as the ranked undefeated team. Now, you would think that they'd be a little bit more than the home field baked in favorite. And I think that's telling that you look at this from a casual eye, you say, oh, ranked undefeated, only give them a point or pick them. Let me take that team. I definitely like the other side. I like Fresno State. I think they got more talent. I think this is their time to take that next step. I think they've been playing tougher competition. San Diego State has not been able to score very well. They have a good defense. They haven't been able to beat down teams. They've been close games, overtime games. They've been uninspiring games, if you will. And I Brady Hoke, it's nice to see him back in the spotlight. I think this is a spot where he's going to want to stay and kind of be at that in-between level, not power conference, but not mid-major. Just be in that in-between, get a team ranked in the top 20 if they can, and just be happy living in San Diego. But I just don't think they have the talent to match up to Fresno State. I think Fresno State's been tested better. They perform better. They have a worse loss at Hawaii, but that's going to happen when you go to the island. And I think Fresno State makes a statement. They say, this is our conference. This is our year. We want our shot. And I think Fresno State comes out with the win.
Interesting. Trey.
Yeah, it's funny when you first start getting into wagering on, well, any sport, and you see something like this, and you kind of haven't learned to study it, and you're, I don't know, maybe back when I was in college or whatever it was, and I saw this line and I go, wait a minute.
Yeah,
the ranked team's at home and it's only giving up one. Oh, give me that bet all day long. And then as you get older, we're sitting there talking about it, you go, okay, something's fishy. Something's just off there. So if you just look at the line, like Ian said, it speaks to you. It just doesn't make sense from a paper standpoint, records and playing at home and who's ranked and who's not and all that kind of stuff. So you dig into it and it can throw you, because the obvious thing is to say, ranked team at home, only given a point. Let's jump all over them. But the matchup here is Fresno's offense, 22nd scoring in the entire country, 35 points a game, versus San Diego State's defense, 7th in the country. That's a classic which side of the ball is going to win this thing. In those matchups, I love teams that can score. And in today's day and age, we've got such an amount of good defenses in college football right now. I put Georgia in a class by themselves. But football in 2021 is not usually won 20-18 like we saw Penn State and Illinois do. It's usually 35-32. So, it's crazy these days. So I find it hard to believe that even though San Diego State's defense is that good, that they can shut down an offense as prolific as Fresno has been. And if that's the case and Fresno's going to put some points up, you look at San Diego State and are they capable of doing that? Very rarely do you find a college football team these days where they only average 126 yards passing a game. 126. Wow. That's San Diego State. I mean, that's almost criminally low unless you're Air Force or Army or somebody like that, and you're under 100. So for a lot of those reasons, again, that line and that spread, you almost want to look at it and go, okay, something's going on here. But I do agree with Ian in that I think Fresno has the better athletes here. San Diego State did play Arizona. They did play Utah. That's, Utah's at least a good team. I don't know if you can say that about Arizona. But I just like the explosiveness, the explosive capability of Fresno's offense. And I don't think San Diego State's as good as that record shows. I know you can only beat who you play. I get that. But especially on the defensive side of the ball. So for that reason, I'm with Ian. I would take the point and take Fresno.
Great breakdown, guys. That's great stuff. Before the Line Movers Network moves on to our rapid fire games of the week, because we just went through the featured games, please, guys, girls, follow along with us on Twitter at the LM_network. Again, on Twitter at the_LM network. And follow us on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is the Line Movers Network YouTube channel. And find us on all different types of social media for all the different sports, all the different leagues. We have it all for you. So please follow along with my different experts in all the different sports. Tonight, again, my college football guys, Ian Robbins, Trey Edge. I'm David Dorman. This is the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. And here we go into rapid fire. Back to the Big Ten, guys. In the low total game of the century, maybe. Not just the week. I don't know. We've seen 37s, 36s in years. But here we go. Iowa is invading Madison this week. Wisconsin's a 3.5 point favorite. The total is 36.5. There hasn't been much movement on the spread or the total. What do we see here, Trey?
Ugly potential.
Defense?
Yeah, you look at, and I know rapid fire. So what is this about? It's about rushing defenses and rushing offenses. Rushing defenses, Iowa, 89 yards a game. Wisconsin, 53 yards a game. But these teams are not prolific through the air. In fact, I find the quarterbacks in this game hard to watch. The stats, if you look at Graham Mertz, 2 TDs, 7 interceptions, for example. But look, it's not about all that. It's about defense. It's about who can impose their will on the other. I like the fact that Iowa comes into this game off of a bye week after the loss to Purdue, where they were undefeated, I think at the time, 2nd in the country. They've had a week to stew on this. Wisconsin's won 3 in a row. Getting to my pick, I will not necessarily picking Iowa to win, but in this style of game, especially if I can get it at 3.5, I'll take Iowa. And I have to sprinkle just a little on the over at 36 because it's criminal just not to do that.
How can't you?
I
It's too
know.
tempting.
Got
It's
you.
just, yeah, a few fluke plays and they're going to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So I'm sure it'll be 10-3 after I pipe in. Ian.
Yeah.
no, I was gonna say the same thing. You get a turnover. These are two turnover prone defenses. You get a turnover here or there, and you get some short fields, and you get a couple touchdowns. And you're over 36. So I think over is a nice look at. Or you get a tied game. You go to overtimes. Maybe some extra points come in here or there. You know, I think it's a classic trap line. You know, Wisconsin unranked 3.5 point favorites versus a top 10 team coming on the road. Pros versus Joe's game. Anything 3 or under, I'll lay it. Anything 3.5 or over, I'll take it. Not heavily. I think money line. I think Wisconsin does come out with a win. Ends Iowa's, any kind of playoff, big bowl hopes, and I do like the over a little bit.
Cool. Moving on, let's go to Big 12 country, down to the state of Texas. The Longhorns of Texas are coming down to Waco to play Baylor, 16th ranked Baylor. Baylor small favorite here, about 3 points, up from the opener about 2. Total of 61 currently. Ian, what do you see here?
Big, both these teams have a little bit of hope left for the Big 12 title game, but I think this is definitely an elimination game. Baylor's certainly been, I think, two teams going in different directions. Baylor's had some wins. Texas struggling a little bit. Good coaching matchups. Aranda against Sarkisian. Talents there. I think Baylor's kind of overperformed a little bit this year. I think that home crowd is going to boost it. I don't think Texas is ready to win yet at a high level. I think Baylor finds a way to sneak it out. Lower scoring game than expected. I do like Baylor to keep their Big 12 title hopes alive.
Wow. Trey.
Yeah, I'm with you. When it first came out and Baylor was, around that 2.5, I like that a lot. Getting up for that field goal makes me a little nervous. And, my gut when I first saw the game, this is a tough one. Honestly, this is a tough one. I looked at it and I went, oh, Texas, it's time for them to rebound. And then you start digging and looking, and you can't find reasons to play them. Bijan Robinson's a beast. I get that, but I'm with Ian. I think the perfect statement is I just don't think they're ready. Baylor 6-1, 3-1, one of the teams you just haven't heard about. They just don't get the pub. I like them at home. I'll ride with Baylor as well.
Great. Let's go back to SEC country. Night game on the Plains. Ole Miss and Kiffin's rolling into Auburn. And the surprising spread of the week, when this came out, I was very surprised Ole Miss wasn't a small favorite here. But what do I know? Auburn opened as a 1-point favorite and really is going up from there, and now is a 2-point favorite. Big total of about 66.5. What do you see, Trey?
Again, these are great games that we picked to go over, because this is another tough one. Who gets all the pub? Who gets all the splash? Ole Miss, 52-51. Arkansas, Lane Kiffin's return to Tennessee, and all the drama that went on there, and they come out of there with a win. And here sits Auburn over there with Brian Hartsatt, the ex-Boise coach, and they've had a pretty good year. You just don't talk about them a lot because they're in the SEC with Bama and Georgia. Off a bye week, Ole Miss is going to put up points. It's just a matter of how many. I'll give you a little just interesting stat. Sometimes the trends don't make the bet, but it's just interesting to think about. Auburn, 9-1, 7-3 against the spread following a bye week since 2013. 7-3 against the spread at home following bye week. So, again, trends, do you believe in that thing? It's a new coach, so does that matter? I don't know. But I look at this game. I've never – this year I have not bought into Ole Miss as much as other people have. I think Auburn has enough defense here to get it done, and I'm going to go with the Tigers.
Ian.
Yeah, this is I don't know what to make of this game. Even match teams, two teams that have been overlooked in the SEC for good reason. I think the one thing I could take out of this game is this is the last kind of big showcase that Matt Corral has for his Heisman campaign. And I think Lane Kiffin knows that. And I think this is the push for Matt Corral in a game at night after all these great games in the SEC and around the country this weekend to kind of try to put up a statement, put up 50. They might lose 50, 51, 50, but to put up points for Matt Corral in his Heisman campaign to try to get him into New York for the ceremony, to try to get in that last push. So I have no idea on the side, but I do like points in the over in this game.
And one other quick note, keep an eye early in this game to what Matt Corral looks like. He was a little nicked up last week, had an ankle problem. Just watch him early and see if you think he's healthy or not, how he's moving in the pocket. It may give you something to look at on a live line there.
Yeah, live line betting for this game for sure.
Yeah, to Trey's point, Corral's taken some big hits the last 2 weeks. He's gotten absolutely blasted. I agree. That's a big factor. Rolling on in rapid fire, our last game. Moving on to the AAC conference, and here is a big one. In the state of Texas and for the entire conference, SMU, ranked 19th in the country and have a perfect 7-0 record, are heading down to Houston, who's also showing a nice 6-1 record. The winner of this is probably going to be in line to get Cincinnati in the conference championship in Cincinnati's last chance to show the committee they deserve the playoff spot. Who are they going to play? SMU from Dallas is rolling into Houston. Houston's about a 1-point favorite. It has stayed steady all week. A total down from 62 and a half to down about to 60 currently. Ian, what do you like here?
Interesting game here. SMU, Houston, a couple of coaches brought down from the Power 5 level. Sonny Dykes at SMU going against Dana Holgerson at Houston. Both programs going in really the right direction. Both programs will be a force in the mid-major in the next couple of years, as long as they stay in the mid-major in the AAC, the non-Power 5 conferences. I'm gonna lean the home team here in Houston. I think they've been kind of flying a little bit under the radar with SMU. I think the talent level is equal, and that I'm going to take the home team. I think Houston's going to get it done and set up a date with Cincinnati to close out the year.
Trey.
I'm with Ian on this one. I tell you why I like him at home. I like Houston. Just a couple quick things. SMU has struggled on the road historically past few years. 1-4 against the spread, last 5 on the road. 1-6 straight up on the road at Houston, last 7. Again, historical things don't necessarily make it true this year. I get that. The other thing I like is Houston struggled last week, held on to beat at a below average East Carolina team. I look at that and think, okay, there's your scare. Now you come into big game with SMU. Maybe that wakes you up a little bit in the big game of the season for you so far. I'll roll with the Cougars as well. Take Houston.
Awesome breakdown. Guys, thank you. My college football experts tonight, Ian Robbins, Trey Edge. I'm David Dorman. You've been listening to the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week. Follow us along for our NFL guys who are red hot. Follow us on Twitter at @the_LM Network. Again, on Twitter at @the_LM Network. We have our own YouTube channel, the Line Movers YouTube channel. Follow along for all the different sports and all our different experts like Ian Robbins, Trey Edge on college football. I'm David Dorman. Thanks for joining us.